I have discovered a series in the realm of Local 58. A VHS archive of an ordinary broadcast company. Animal education, storm safety, space knowledge, artificial intelligence, and are among the topics presented to us in the form of short, educational VHS guides. Tonight, we will envelop ourselves within this fantastic educational series. This is Gemini Home Entertainment. Oh yeah, I'm digging this. On our plate tonight is an analog horror series by an internet creator named Remy Abode, birthed from an alternate reality gone awry. Containing events stemming from the hope for a brighter future, Gemini Home Entertainment is a video distribution company ready to take you on an educational trip through various avenues of life knowledge. What that knowledge is exactly is unclear at this point in time, but what we do know is that something in their reality is out of place. Something isn't right here. The series was born on November 13th of 2019 and has since built up to a total of 16 videos, each with their own surprises and each giving us a different piece of the puzzle as to what's happening within this world. The guides are presented in a VHS anthology format, a far cry from the silent onlooking and broadcast interruptions we experienced in Local 58. Whoever's behind Gemini wanted people to see this, and everything within each recording is as it should be. Tonight on our plate, we have the following before us: World's Weirdest Animals, Storm Safety Tips, The Deep Blue, Artificial Computer Learning, Our Solar System, Camp Information Video, Lethal Omen, Wilderness Survival Guide, Sleep Image Visualizer, Games for Kids, Advanced Mining Vehicle, Deep Root Disease, Monthly Progress Report, Christmas Eve Party, Home Invasion Help, and last but not least, Crusader Probe Mission. Because there doesn't appear to be any sort of established timeline here, we're going to tackle these in the order of their release date. If you can't tell by now, we've got our work cut out for us, so pop open those Lunchables and grab that Crystal Pepsi. We're about to dive into some analog horror. This, my friends, is Gemini Home Entertainment. World's Weirdest Animals. The video opens by showing a strange and wacky wildlife that inhabits various regions of Minnesota, like prairie chickens and burrowing owls. The overall pacing and layout of the video are pretty simple, with the names of the animals being presented alongside a couple facts, all over some calm B-roll footage. The overall tone changes a bit once we make it to the 3-minute mark. Contrary to the prior animals, the habitat for the one upcoming is denoted as everywhere. And if that weren't strange enough, music is non-existent from this point forward. merely leaving us with an ominous dead air. And so, the next animal up is something called a woodcrawler. For the next couple minutes, the video explains a bit more about them, like the fact that they're found all over North America, are excellent hunters, do not make any noise at all, and prefer the homes of large families for nesting. Apparently, they adapt to this residential environment, although it's unclear what exactly that means. So, right in the middle of episode 1, we get a brief glimpse of what we can assume to be a woodcrawler. It appears to be some sort of long-legged creature, and I've got a funny feeling that its actual body is much larger than a human. Curiously, the video also presented somewhat of a paradox, claiming that you will hear screaming, but they stole their voices. If we're assuming that the victims of these so-called woodcrawlers are humans, then it leaves us wondering what exactly they're doing to them. Lastly, I find it interesting that this creature was described as nature's mockery, as that term could be interpreted in a couple different ways. Are woodcrawlers ridiculing our entire perception of nature and how life within it functions? Or are they some kind of absurd imitation of human life? I could be way overanalyzing this first part, but I'm just curious why that's there, considering how unnatural this creature looks. In this next scene, we're outside of that same house at night. It's hard to make out, but we can notice people inside of it this time. Why? Yeah, those aren't people, are they? So, with their bizarre, unnatural behavior, combined with a caption claiming that they're fake people, it's clear that woodcrawlers don't kill humans. They imitate them. This effectively establishes synonymy between the two, as their method of adapting somehow involves taking over their bodies and conforming, to the best of their ability, to natural human life. As we've seen though, their behavior is far from it. They are incredibly tense, they can't properly interact, and when faced with an outsider that isn't one of their kind, they attack them. They're an absurd imitation of the human form, a true mockery of nature. storm safety tips. Brought to you by Harbinge Technologies. The focus of this video is to help keep you and your family informed on how to remain safe in the event of a major catastrophic storm. The steps outlined are pretty cut and dry, with the first being to reinforce your home by improving structural support, replacing roof shingles, and fixing leaks. Step 2 advises that you install an early warning system that, conveniently, Harbinge Technologies makes. According to the video, this albedo alarm will warn you ahead of time if a storm or other danger is approaching your home. Interesting. I wonder what that could be. The third step involves building a storm bunker, which should be precisely 18 feet long by 10 feet tall. The tape then advises us to install a 4 to 5 foot wide aluminum hemisphere and to place their timber shortwave radio next to it. We're given no further context on why it should be there, but it should. This next segment explains what to do during these storms. It's first advised to take our family to the bunker, followed by powering on our timber radio and remaining calm. Oddly, when these steps are shown, conflicting statements appear below each one that seem to add nothing to the table in terms of instruction. Rather, it tends to inflict the viewer with doubt, with claims like, "Your home doesn't belong to you now. Ignore all sound produced by the radio. They're auditory hallucinations." And "Your tears are filled with salt." If we took these statements away, we wouldn't be losing out on anything, which makes me wonder why it's there and who the hell wrote it. Listen, under your feet, crawling through the floor. It seems that this line is referencing wood crawlers, which leads me to believe that this storm isn't the type we know of in a conventional sense. This, combined with the immediate camera cut to lights in the field, alongside that warning to return to the bunker if we see them, makes it appear that these wood crawlers and whatever's emitting these lights are perhaps the same creature. With this in mind, this leaves us to wonder what exactly this storm entails. How often does it happen? And most importantly, why is it happening? Deep blue. by a Geneva production company. The premise of this one is simple. Lighthearted education about various creatures and regions of the deep blue sea. Towards the latter half of the video, we cut to a section about the deep ocean. The Marianas Trench is introduced as a large foreboding hole in the ocean floor, described as the deepest place on Earth. Following this, we can observe a cross-section view, introducing an even deeper and more ambiguous region of the ocean called the Demizia Tunnel. And, ominously, the depth here is unknown. Nothing can live inside the Marianas Trench. The same, however, can't be said about the Demizia Tunnel. Taking what we know so far about woodcrawlers, how they were introduced, and the connection to them from storm safety tips, I'm led to believe that this creature is perhaps a full-body shot of one of them. With this, we become aware of their ability to exist on land, underground, and beneath the extreme pressure of the ocean floor, cementing them as a highly resilient creature that humans, by all accounts, need to stay away from. Regnad computing, huh? This next entry involves a new state-of-the-art AI tech showcase. The overview explains that it's been in development for about 4 years and is already highly advanced. Curiously, this is the only tape so far to start off with absolutely no music, which I found notable considering that in each video so far, the music stops when an ominous revelation is about to happen. The AI showcase is laid out in the form of short stories. Each iteration spans 4 lines of text, and as we progress through this video, we'll find that what starts off as unintelligible quickly morphs into something we're able to logically follow. As expected, this first story made little sense. We can gather an overall idea of what it's trying to convey through words like river, a secret, death, and the names Jack and Mary. Iteration 2 expands on this a bit, and reads the following. Jack leapt over the river. Mary followed close behind. They're searching for the secret place. I hear you. And with iteration 3, Jack leapt over the river. There goes Mary down the stream. The secret place will keep us safe. The river flows, but not with water. Alright, so that was a lot to take in. Those last two iterations diverted pretty heavily from the original story, formulating a narrative with tons of clues to pick apart. The story here surrounds two people named Jack and Mary. We can assume that they're out in the wild, leaping over a river to get to a secret place. It's unclear what this secret place is, but for now, we can assume it to be a storm safety bunker. In iteration 4, we get references to a so-called voice from space, and in that same story, it's clear that Mary has become something else. This something else looks to be the product of the hungry eye that's referenced thereafter. However, by this point in the video, we're unsure of what exactly that is. Something else I found interesting was this small detail. At the beginning, we're told we're going to explore 3 iterations of short stories by this AI. In reality, we received 5. This leaves us with 2 options on why this is. Either an external party had tampered with the video or this computer, or this AI is somehow advanced enough to make decisions on its own. Personally, I'm led to believe the former, and this is why. As we could say, the structure of these stories takes place in third person. During iterations 2, 4, and 5, however, we receive specific lines of text that address either us or Jack in the first person. And after stringing these together, we gain an interesting result. I hear you. Jack, do you see me? I've become something else. Do you see the hungry eye? Here I am. With this context, I want you to listen very carefully to that last iteration once more. There is some sort of voice coming through the broadcast. It's extremely muffled, however it's clear that something is either interfering or feeding information to this AI. And personally, I'm led to believe that it's Mary. She and Jack are not just filler names for these stories. They are actual people, and I'm going to infer that the story presented actually happened. Moving on. Towards the video's end, we observed a glitch into 2 diagrams. Given the references to the voice from space and the moving stars, I'm led to believe that these 2 circles represent planets. The larger appears to be the hungry eye, being denoted as alive, with intent. It seems to be hyper-focusing on a smaller planet, which we can assume to be Earth, and in the second diagram, we can observe the effects that this eye is having on us. Somehow, it's projecting some sort of vessel down to Earth, and once it makes contact, it mutates into the creatures we've been seeing thus far. It's clear that there's something larger at play here, and there's a lot of context that we're still missing. So let's keep this in mind and press on to see what else Gemini has for us. When we shift gears to our solar system, we're able to learn a few facts about the various planets. A diagram greets us, encompassing the Sun, Mercury, Venus, Earth, Mars, Jupiter, Saturn, Uranus, Neptune. After learning facts about the Sun, Mercury, and Venus, we then make our way to Earth, described as one of the only planets in our solar system capable of supporting life. Upon making our way to Jupiter, the video highlights its big red spot. It claims that it's not an eye. It is an open wound. We then observe Saturn. The outer portion of its ring is absent, and it's denoted as something called the Gateway. Is new. It's with us now, laughing at us. It's clear that the overarching threat is not that of woodcrawlers, but the iris, which has somehow caused neighboring Neptune to mutate. What exactly that means at this point in time is unclear, but if I were to guess, it could be some sort of breeding ground for the creatures it emits by solar storm. Due to its presence, other planets like Jupiter and Saturn are beginning to suffer from the effects of its influence. And given the story so far, it's safe to conject that its next target is Earth. Tape 6 changes gears a bit. Here, we're introduced to a freshly reopened campground called Moonlight Acres, a serene getaway that's completely isolated from outside civilization. The tape showcases its many accommodations and activities, including hiking trails, archery, canoeing, and their flagship Lights in the Sky event, which is oddly denoted as a harvest. Afterwards, we're able to catch a glimpse of their various structures. Among these are burrow-free family cabins, kids' cabins, and even their original rustic cabins for those feeling a bit more outdoorsy. Each of these are beautifully decorated to ensure your stay is as cozy as possible, and you can rest easy knowing that they have alarms in place in case a sudden storm takes place. Just be absolutely, positively sure not to... Do not answer the knocking at the door. Around 3 minutes into the video, we're introduced to the mythology behind Moonlight Acres. Allegedly back in the 1930s, strange, well-dressed men would visit the campground, asking to enter the admin's cabin every single night for years. Apparently one night, a deal was made with them and they left, never to be seen again. Following this, we get a mention of skinwalkers that were allegedly sighted during the same time period. For those unaware, skinwalkers are a type of shape-shifting humanoid creature that's able to inhabit the form of any animal they desire. It's unclear if they're referencing the same type of skinwalker within Gemini Home Entertainment. But with what we know about woodcrawlers and how they function, I definitely see some overlap. Levitch, Barry Johnson, Truman Michaels, Bethany Newman, Alec Davison, and Dorothy Bates are listed as vessels. Carriers of something that isn't good. It's clear to us that the knocking was coming from woodcrawlers, and given the photo of them, we're able to finally establish a scale for how gargantuan these creatures can be. I'm going to conject that the woodcrawler we saw in World's Weirdest Animals was much younger than the ones we're seeing here in Moonlight Acres. While we're currently unsure of what their lifespan is, we know that this one surely wouldn't fit into a house. Given the campground's mythology, with the stories about the strange men that coexisted with so-called skinwalkers in the 1930s, this implies that these creatures have been here for decades. But this leaves us to wonder what they've been doing and how they've upheld the status of mere campground mythology for so long. We know the original staff opened their doors, likely being killed or transformed into fake people and resulting in the campground's original closure. But where the hell have they been since then? What is clear is that Moonlight Acres is back open, now advertising burrow-free cabins and having a clear awareness of these creatures existing. Someone gave it the green light. But who? Wilderness Survival Guide. In this one, a man named Jack Wilder is going to teach us about wildlife. Fitting name and familiar. The video opens informing us about various safety measures to take place when out in the wild. We learn which equipment to bring and are then presented with various natural hazards to be aware of, like thorns, ditches, various animals, and what to do if we ever come face to face with a bear. There's our skinwalker. So we now know that woodcrawlers can not only kill and inhabit the bodies of humans, but animals too. Interesting. Following this section, we're greeted with numerous flora and their impacts on humans. Among these are poison ivy, which causes rashes, itching, swelling, and blisters. Water hemlock, which causes trembling, convulsions, respiratory failure, and death. And lastly, something called nature's mockery. Not the woodcrawler description we saw earlier, but the actual, proper nature's mockery. Its effects on humans encompass hallucinations, sudden muscular paralysis, body disfigurement, and flesh decay. In other words, something that can latch onto you, something that can break you, deforming you into a being hardly resembling that of a human. But hey, at least it won't kill you. One of the most disturbing and unethical aspects of this video was the description of a human pleading for help. Clearly, they were desperately in need. However, the video plays it off, persuading you that this human being that's probably on the brink of death is nothing but an auditory hallucination. Knowing what we know about fake people and their conformity to human life, I understand that this could very easily be one of them. But what if it isn't? We're presented with a catch-22 here. If we risk our own life to help this person and they're not a fake person, then we've done something good and helped save a life. But if we assume that it's a fake person without ever confirming it, we'll never know any better and they'd be left to die. It's a tactic of manipulation. Gemini Home Entertainment has planted a seed in the heads of whoever watches this, and it effectively contributes to a moral apprehension, a panic per se, in which you truly cannot trust anyone. Moving on, we then learn how to create a fire. Critical knowledge for anyone venturing into the wild. If your fire fails to start though, Jack Wilder advises to And so we have Exhibit a fake person screaming for help, like bait. Welcome to Lethal Omen, a video game intended for Regnat computers. It takes place at Moonlight Acres, and throughout this video, we're able to observe the embodiment of various motifs we've seen in videos past. The beginning of the game starts out serene. The player peeks around the campground a bit, however is soon greeted with an enemy mob that are out to get them. Interestingly, these enemies appear to be dressed in military fatigues, giving rise to the possibility that there's some sort of military intervention at play here. It should be noted that there have been absolutely zero references to government involvement thus far. However, given the circumstances, it would make sense. Keep this in mind. We'll come back to it. Anyway, a few moments later, we encounter what seems to be a fake person, and afterwards, the campground alarm begins blaring. The game tells us to run. And that, my friends, is what takes place during a storm. Panic disruption, invasion. It appears to me that the basement we sought refuge in followed every single protocol that Harbinged outlined back in Storm Safety Tips. The dome was there and the radio was on, but that didn't stop them. Like breaking through cardboard, a woodcrawler was able to breach their advertised fortress of refuge with ease, which leaves me curious if Harbinged made their guide in good faith. If we can recall, there was a double purpose to their video. Not only were they giving advice, but they were also selling products, like the timber radio and the albedo alarm. From an outside perspective, they appear to be capitalizing on mass panic to reap profits, although that point is merely conjecture since, for all we know, they too may be oblivious to the inefficacy of their products. The blind leading the blind, per se. Alright, I know this is a video game, but if the Iris can move around the solar system at will, coming within a critical distance from Earth, then yeah, there's a problem. And it ain't just woodcrawlers. Interestingly, this section occurred at twilight, which mirrors the various other references we've seen to woodcrawler activity. The fields, the fake people, the knocking. If there's something I take away here, it's that it seems that these creatures are more active, more violent, when the sun goes down. Oh yeah, I forgot to mention, you can actually play this. Lethal Omen is a game chock full of secrets. You can spend a solid hour exploring Moonlight Acres, discovering its hidden lore, and unlocking each of the 5 endings awaiting you. I'm going to go over them now, so if you'd like to play this for yourself and keep things unspoiled, I'll give you 10 seconds to skip forward to this timestamp. Like we established, within Lethal Omen, there are 5 different endings to uncover. Before we get to those though, I want to bring you into the campground to explore the hidden lore awaiting us. We begin the game next to a highway outside of Moonlight Acres. Both ends of the road are blocked off, however we can observe 2 cars nearby, one out in this field, and another resembling a police car. We're tasked with collecting 3 keys, and after doing so, we're then granted access to the campground. One of the first things you'll notice is this bulletin board. It contains 2 notes and 2 strange images that are hard to make out. The first note informs us of the Lights in the Sky event taking place tonight at 9:30 p.m., and the second informs us to bring our so-called SIV. Moving inward, we're then greeted with 6 cabins. In the first, we can observe headphones, a shortwave radio, a TV, and a Gemini Home Entertainment VHS tape. In the second, we get much of the same. This time though, a stack of tapes containing storm safety tips and other Gemini media are present. However, there is this one that I'm unable to make out. In the third, we can observe a TV playing a Gemini tape. Here, we learn that an SIV is something called a sleep image visualizer that we're required to plug into a module, and that same Civ module can be seen lying on the dresser. Given the name, it seems that the Civ's goal centers around recording dreams. For who, how, and why, we're currently unsure of. But interestingly, if we shoot this specific monitor, we're able to observe the Civ in action for Adam Levitch, the former men's club supervisor that we know is transformed into a vessel. In cabin 4, we can see that things are a bit messier. On the TV once more is that Civ tutorial, and scattered across the room are numerous Civs and headphones, along with the tape labeled Albedo Alarm Settings Video. Moving on to cabin 5, we can observe a huge mess. There isn't much to this one besides this Civ on the ground. And last but not least, cabin 6. This one has clearly been ravaged by something, evident by the large break in the floor. Within it, we can observe that Civ tape, along with the Civ module and some sort of strange plague surrounding it. Upon making our way back outside into the archery area, we're greeted with 7 targets, along with our first enemy encounter. After taking them out and approaching the targets, we're able to read snippets of articles about the events taking place at Moonlight Acres. Campgoers distraught after Moonlight Acres' famous Lights in the Sky event is abruptly cancelled. If you've been looking forward to the Lights in the Sky event this year at Moonlight Acres Family Camp, don't be so hasty to pack your bags. The official Moonlight Acres website recently updated, revealing that the event has been abruptly cancelled with no reason given. Campgoers are enraged, especially those who go to Moonlight Acres every year simply to watch the event, and demand an explanation for the abrupt cancellation. The Times asked Moonlight Acres for an interview. They politely declined. The others partially covered, making it a bit harder to make out, but it seems to focus on the disappearance of a person named Jordan Barnes. They were most likely Canadian, and given the fact that this note is beneath the one about the Lights in the Sky cancellation, we can assume that this is why. Investigators are curious though as to why so many are worried about their disappearance, pondering if they're victims of a so-called mass hysteria. Moving on, once we make our way to the administrator's cabin, we can observe numerous campground photos covering the walls. The first, amusingly, contains a Mario 64 reference and displays an aerial view of the campground. The second shows the campground entrance from 1982. The third is a swimming pool, circa 1988. And the fourth is a camp staff group photo taken in 1984. On the far wall are numerous other camp photos that are unlabeled, and opposite this are shelves full of VHS tapes. Here we can make out various Gemini videos. However, this specific one bears a name and date. Given what we know so far about the Civs and how they operate, I'm led to believe that this might be an archive of numerous staff dreams. Further inside, we find a shelf full of TVs and a strange door that's floating on the wall. Upon making our way up to it, we encounter an unkempt attic full of discarded televisions, and on the floor beneath them, various notes, reading the following. It was looking into me. Wants to eat the camp. I fear the men may return. My face is going away. I hear voices. The spot on my neck has grown. There's a bonfire tonight. I'll stay in my bedroom. Lights in the skies tonight. I've been told that the men will be present. Maybe it will leave us alone now. Something that stood out to me here was the reference to the spot on their neck. It seems to allude to an infection that is slow moving, and there are absolutely zero references to woodcrawlers or any sort of creature. Given what we know so far about nature's mockery, it doesn't seem to be that either, which leaves me curious if there's another form of infection taking place here. Something biologic. Moving on, if we make our way back outside and head leftward, we encounter what I assume to be nature's mockery, and within it, a heavily deformed human being giving us a visual as to what this plant actually does to you. While examining it, the fake person we saw back in the commercial gameplay spawns in. And then we're told to run. And so, like we saw earlier, we make our way back to the bunker, and from here, everything plays out as shown before. Well, except that. And so, this time, we hear a fake person screaming in the distance.
Help me! No way! Help!
And we come to find that they're infected with the same plague we saw on the cabin floor.
Help me!
And that, my friends, is ending 1. Play the game like the commercial and encounter the iris staring into you. From here, we're going to explore the other 4 endings. Clearly, Lethal Omen's lore is gargantuan, leaving us with tons of questions that we're currently unable to answer. I'm curious what else there is to find though, so let's head back in to uncover it. Moving on to ending 2, you once again begin the game as usual. Collect the keys and fight the enemies. However, this time, instead of approaching the Nature's Mockery abomination, you gotta make your way back to the admin's attic. Once you're inside and turn around to exit though, you're greeted with a strange mannequin that tracks your every move. And after approaching it, you observe the following. To unlock ending 3, you need to collect the keys, kill the enemies, and approach Nature's Mockery. This time, instead of making your way to the cabin or bunker, you're required to pass through this secret entrance to the family cabin area to claim this hidden key that's also covered in that plague. After obtaining it, you make your way back to the front, where you'll find this target that you've got to shoot. And after doing so and heading to the highway the campground lies on, you encounter an abandoned police car before the following plays out. Ending 4 involves us making our way back in. After taking out the first round of enemies, we're required to shoot each target before making our way back to the entrance. Curiously, we then find an opening in the tree line, and upon exploring it, we encounter a massive, foreboding hole that's also covered in plague. Upon approaching it, we can hear the sounds of creatures in the distance. And of course, we do as any sane person would do and jump in, giving us our fourth ending. And last but not least, the true ending. Here, we gotta do everything we've done prior. Keys, enemies, mockery, plagued key, and heading back to the front. Curiously, we then see an opening in the fence line, and after approaching it, we encounter a group of enemies in a formation. This time though, they're not out to kill us. They're waiting on us. But that isn't everything. The game continues. We approach a tree with a sign. Shifting tendons shape anatomy. There are fewer livestock now. And another. Wretched hands tap my window. A stranger's fangs scrape the walls. And another. The floorboards creak while I sleep. Growing cracks leak with red. The field has eyes, burning deep. They are becoming restless. The mannequins, the hole, the police car, the ritual, and the iris. There is a ton to unpack within Lethal Omen, and the beauty of it is that when presented in a video game format, you're left to encounter these on your own. So let's recap. The role of the mannequins seen in the attic ending is currently unclear. It's important to note that they appear to have a much higher polygon count than anything else found in Lethal Omen, but aside from that, hardly any context is given regarding their existence. If I had to guess, I'd say that they represent the strange men that the camp admin referenced in their note. If we can recall, right after reading it is when we encounter them for the very first time. leading to a potential connection between the two. However, this is hitherto unconfirmed. Moving on to the hole, this appears to be the byproduct of woodcrawlers, their breadcrumb trail as they breach the confines of Earth. It's currently unclear what exactly that plague is, but perhaps we'll find our answers in later uploads. The police car seems to represent a victim. The police likely received calls of strange activity going on at Moonlight Acres, potentially involving the missing Jordan Barnes. However, after investigation, they never made it out to reveal the truth. There is a looming impression that they're aware of woodcrawlers, but this is also unconfirmed. And lastly, the ritual, an embodiment of helplessness. After realizing that everyone around you is infected, is a fake person, you lose all hope on fighting back. Police can't help you. Camp admins answer the door. They can't help you. The bunker that's supposed to keep you safe, that can't help you. And a supermassive sentient eye is looming over you. It goes without saying that in a situation like this, fighting back is futile, and the game communicates this by waiting on you. Get in, they beckon. Give in.
We'll return after these messages.
Alright, halfway there. You still with me? As we can see, there is a lot going on with Gemini Home Entertainment. We still have tons of questions about the overall story here, but I wanted to circle back and recap on what we know so far. Refill your drink, heat up another popcorn, and get cozy, because you and I are only getting started. In review. Within Gemini Home Entertainment, the entire story revolves around the Iris. We know the Iris is a supermassive sentient planet that entered our solar system without humans ever knowing it. When, how, or why it did is currently unclear. But what we do know is that it infected the neighboring ice giant Neptune, turning it into something that is alive. Neptune has become somewhat of a minion to the Iris, a vessel or lens that it uses to emit solar storms targeting Earth. Given the diagram from artificial computer learning, we can infer that within these solar storms are embryos and seeds that mutate into woodcrawlers in nature's mockery upon landing on Earth, the Iris's next target for mutation. Back home, the primary prey of woodcrawlers are humans, but we know that they're able to inhabit the bodies of animals as well. Woodcrawlers are highly resilient and clever, given their ability to imitate humankind, although it's still unclear what exactly they do to achieve this. On top of woodcrawlers, nature's mockery is introduced as the major flora to steer clear from, and its method of infection appears to be via direct contact. Somehow, at an unknown speed, this plant paralyzes and disfigures whatever it comes into contact with, leaving the victim in a vegetative state forever. At this point, we're currently unsure if nature's mockery eventually kills you. But even if it did, that's not much better. Within the camp information video, we catch wind of the mythology behind a campground called Moonlight Acres. Given that the strange knocking men existed at the same time as the so-called skinwalkers in the 1930s, I'm led to assume that this campground was among the very first establishments to encounter the effects of the Iris. This explains why every single original staff member died. Well, except the admin. They weren't listed. This point leads us to Lethal Omen, an archaic video game that cements the time period for Gemini somewhere in the 1990s. To me, the game seems to place us into the shoes of that admin, taking us through their final minutes within their desolate campground. The various endings seem to be symbolic of the many ways they could have died, but that true ending, the hopeless suicide and transformation, that is the one that killed them. Lastly, we have two characters, Jack Wilder and Mary. Admittedly, Mary's background has been elusive. We can assume that she mutated into a woodcrawler somehow, and have also made the tenuous assumption that she's trying to communicate to Jack through the Regnat computers. Regarding Jack, he's a recurring character throughout Gemini Home Entertainment. Obvious references are made in the wilderness and AI videos, and given the nature of his work as a wildlife videographer, it leaves me to wonder if he has more to do with these tapes than they're letting on. If we can recall, World's Weirdest Animals, Storm Safety Tips, and Wilderness Survival Guide all have strikingly similar shots of video. So if he's the one behind these, clearly being attacked in the very first video, we're left to wonder what happened to him. Where is he? And so, alongside the abstruse nature of Jack's role here, there are still tons of questions left unanswered. Why do these tapes start off ordinarily, but devolve into a disturbing mess? Do each of the companies that Gemini Home Entertainment distributes for have humanity's best interests in mind, or is there something larger at play here? What exactly was that plague we kept seeing in Lethal Omen? Why are there stockpiles of Civ recordings in the admin's cabin? How exactly do woodcrawlers infect humans? Is the majority of humanity aware of this impending threat? And most importantly, why did the Iris enter our solar system? We know it's there, but we don't know how it operates and what its overarching plans are. What we do know, though, is that Gemini Home Entertainment is aware of all of this. They know about woodcrawlers, nature's mockery, the plague, the deaths, and Neptune's infection, but coincidentally, we know the least about them. Clearly, there's a lot of context left to fill. So let's buckle down and see what else Gemini has in store for us. Well, perfect timing. For video 9, we once again meet our good friends over at Harbinge Technologies. This time, they're presenting an instructional guide on how to set up a sleep image visualizer, a device in which we can assume to give us a look into the dreams of others. We begin by orienting ourselves with a Civ module and headset before we move on to learn how to set it up. Interestingly, throughout this video, we'll soon notice anomalous interruptions that have been recorded over this tape. Interesting. So, in the middle of this video, we observe it cut to the dream sequence of a Levi Jacobs, and within it, we witness our first mannequin character outside of Lethal Omen. No further context is given to why they're there, but curiously, Right after this dream sequence, we can observe that same mannequin head being used to represent a Civ client. Let's recap real quick. Levi Jacobs was asleep for 4 minutes. Adrian Gordon was asleep for 4 minutes. Jack Dean, however, was asleep for 3 days. Alright, so throughout this one, we received 2 references to the iris. One being in the Goodnight sequence, and another being within the dream of Joseph Allen, who never woke up. Interestingly, the video is very matter-of-fact in claiming that these images do not represent reality or the future. However, it's clear to us that they do represent the circumstances they're living in. Now, backing up. We've seen the name Jack in the series twice so far. Firstly in Artificial Computer Learning, and most recently in the Wilderness Survival Guide. His last name is different in this one, but for brevity, just know that this is the same person. Over on the Gemini Home Entertainment YouTube channel, they posted this image around the same time the Civ video released. On the very bottom, we're able to see his full name, and to the left, we can make out bits of the story surrounding him. According to the article, Jack is a prominent TV personality and wildlife expert. He had gone missing in May, and his disappearance has been the subject of a nationwide manhunt. He allegedly disappeared while filming a new special aimed to protect and enlighten what I'm assuming to be people from what are most likely the effects of the iris. Curiously, the month he went missing and the time period he underwent Civ testing are both one and the same, which leaves us to wonder if, perhaps, this 3-day slumber somehow led to his death. While that is currently unclear, what is clear is that Jack Dean's Wilderness Survival Guide and the World's Weirdest Animals videos are distinctly connected. 2 parts of the same series of videos by him. With this in mind, we know he's been in the Civ, and we also know that he's been attacked by fake people. Either of these could have killed him. So which one was it? Where is he? Next up on our list is a family-friendly guide made by an Optica Video called Games for Kids. Are you bored? Need some new, fun games to play? Well, you're in luck, they claim. And so we learn about the ins and outs of various games the kids can play. First up, hide and seek. Simple enough, one player's the seeker and the rest are hiders. They count to 20 and go on the hunt. Next up, freeze tag. One player is it, while the rest are runners. Third up, sardines. The sibling to hide and seek. One person hides and the rest go seek. Fourth up, a game called Well, that's new. Contrary to every bit of advice we've gotten in videos past, like staying quiet and following the lights when the sun goes down, are all thrown out the window. We know that wood crawlers and fake people are more active at night, and advice like this does nothing but ensure their demise. Unless that's the point. So Feed the Woods, a game that unequivocally leads children to their own death. As we could see, during this section we observed numerous camera shots of the forest. Interestingly, in the third one, we could observe this strange red light in the sky. It seems to match the eye that we've seen on woodcrawlers, and given the nature of this game, it would make sense. Clearly, the woods are a threat, a sort of eldritch location that serves as a breeding ground for these creatures. And as with anything that is alive, they need to feed. Backing up, I wanted to highlight the creator of this tape, a company named Optica Video. Considering the name, combined with the addition of a game that quite literally kills children at the benefit of these creatures, I'm led to assume that Optica Video is not a kids company at all. This is a manipulation tape with nefarious intent, and it also drives home the point that the woodcrawler's food source is drying up. With this notion in mind, let's think back to Moonlight Acres. We established that it was ostensibly ground zero for the Iris, the very first location in which humanity experienced the effects of it. Given what we know from Lethal Omen about the Lights in the Sky event cancellation and the disappearance of Jordan Barnes, we can speculate that perhaps Moonlight Acres is or was closed during the time this tape was made. The woodcrawlers are hungry, leaving them with no choice but to expand to the neighboring forest to inhabit and feast on animals, which, as we learned from the camp admin's note, also began to dwindle in numbers. It's here when we realize that they're scraping for anything they can get, and this is further evident by the shot of the woodcrawler devouring the police car at the video's end. Whoever's behind Optica Video isn't someone inherently good. They're helping them, leading us, for the very first time, to question the morality of Gemini Home Entertainment as a company. With Regnad, Harbinge, and Geneva, there was, at the very least, ambiguity in their ethics. But here, that's not the case at all. Next up on our journey is a tape named Advanced Mining Vehicle. Here, we're introduced to a Canadian organization called NAMAD, or Northern Alberta Mining and Development. The video begins by introducing us to a new, revolutionary piece of mining technology called the Remote Operated Compact Tunneler. As the name implies, it provides the user with tunneling capabilities while mitigating all risk that would otherwise be involved. The video then informs us of the various technologies present within the ROCT, like an optical zoom lens to focus on important details, a compact microphone to detect running water or nests, and even an altimeter with a heads-up display so you're always conscious of where and what the ROCT is tunneling into. Following this, we learn of the heavily protected, industrial-grade battery aboard the ROCT. And it seems like we're gonna need it, considering it's been spotted by something. We then cut back to the ROCT's camera at a depth of 145 meters. Interestingly, spread throughout these caves are some sort of fleshy, stringy substance that we haven't yet seen. So here, we observe the ROCT tunnel into what appears to be a woodcrawler nest, which are later referred to as gardens. The deeper we go, the more infested things become, which, combined with the phrase mutation of the heart, leads me to believe that these creatures are infecting and mutating Earth somehow from the inside out. The purpose of the red flesh is currently unclear. However, we can postulate that it's some kind of artery for the woodcrawler's crops. Whether those crops are the woodcrawler's offspring, nature's mockery, or something else entirely is also undetermined. However, we know that something is being propagated beneath the ground floor. Video 12 is an educational film brought to us by the Warner Area Department of Health. In this one, we're going to learn about a condition known as deep root disease. The video is split up into 5 sections: roots, contraction, bulbs, diagnosis, and sprouts. In the roots section, we observe an obscure illustration of some sort of growth. We're told that roots begin to form from the underside of something called bulbs, and as growth progresses, its speed accelerates. Furthermore, its base swells as growth continues, resulting in the surrounding area becoming discolored. With this newfound context, we learn that this disease is biologic, driving home the point that this first illustration is taking place underneath the skin's surface. We learn that it progresses rapidly, and after making contact with bones, is able to spread freely. What exactly its effects are is still unclear. contract DRD. Here, though, the subject is, strangely, doing absolutely nothing. Straight off the bat, we can make the connection between deep root disease and the spot on the camp admin's neck. And given what we know from Lethal Omen and the player character's transformation in the suicide ending, I'm definitely seeing some correlation here. Alright, so deep root disease, a somatic condition that, given the ending, appears to spread via direct contact. This video is pivotal because it breaks down a prior assumption about how these human transformations actually work. We initially assumed that woodcrawlers inhabiting victims' bodies were the only way they created fake people. However, in this video, we learn of something entirely different that ultimately results in the formation of new bones and shifting tendons. It goes without saying that this alludes to a human-to-woodcrawler transformation. The process seems to start slow, but rapidly takes off the longer you have it. With this in mind, I wanted to back up to the camp information video and highlight this section about the former camp staff. As we can recall, they were labeled as vessels. When we first got to this point, we were unsure if this was a reference to fake people or something else. However, I'm really beginning to think that these two terms are synonymous. With deep root disease, it is something entirely different. It's a sickness, a plague, spread by direct contact with someone infected. It's this affliction that ultimately results in your untimely transformation into a woodcrawler, leading you to become one with them and gaining a primal desire to hunt, inhabit a vessel, and spread DRD to the next unsuspecting family so they can become one too. So, in short, fake people are gutted and inhabited by woodcrawlers, and due to this notion, they likely don't suffer the effects of deep root disease. On the other hand, deep root disease infects humans, creating new bones and turning you into them. A cycle of life, per se. Monthly progress report. Our third venture into the world of Regnat computing. This one opens by introducing us to various Regnat staff, along with the project name for their AI technology. Following this, they take us through their major advancements through 4 sections: computer processing, predictive advancement, failure avoidance, and ACL communication. In the first, we learn that Regnat graphical capabilities have drastically increased, resulting in the ability to create 3D models like the ones we've seen in Lethal Omen. In the second, we learn of a breakthrough in their predictive advancement technology, which, given the name, seems to give insight into future events. Here, Regnat claims that its capabilities will soon allow their PCs to surpass every competitor within the next year. In Section 3, they tout their successful avoidance of technological failures. They credit this breakthrough to the so-called support and wisdom from their client, but who this client is currently unclear. And lastly, in the final section, they inform us that all communication between Regnat and their client have been recorded from the artificial computer learning monitor room. That recording is as follows. For the past 3 minutes, we observed the AI tech in action. Given that this time, we have a grander, outside perspective on how things work, it allows us to formulate some key points. For one, we can see that the RegNet computers are becoming infected with the sprouts we saw in deep root disease, hinting at the possibility that this mutation can spread through some medium of analog transmission. 2. We realize that they're on iteration 1417, meaning that they've nailed down communication to an art. 3. We understand that the ACO module feeds the client a prompt, transmitting it through various antennae on the outside of the building. And 4. The client, which is presumably of iris origin, is responding, effectively opening a line of communication between humanity and these creatures. Now, at the end of the video, we observed RegNet's eagerness to meet their client, meaning that they're well aware that they're communicating with something. This is not an artificial intelligence, and these stories bear stark references to what we've seen from Gemini so far. In iteration 1417, we can observe that the prompt is Earth, with the response given reading. Mary sees the gateway die. Sleeping ones are eaten whole. The vessel floats into the maw. The jaw unhinges. Now, this could reference one of two things. Either we can take it literally, assuming that woodcrawlers eat people like the vessels we saw in the camp information video, or we can take this symbolically. The line Mary sees the gateway die seems to allude back to Saturn and its rings. Given that they seem thinner than usual in the Our Solar System video, combined with the fact that it was referenced as the gateway, perhaps Saturn is in the way of sorts, unknowingly suppressing the iris's influence on Earth. It's withering away, and at the very same time, the threat of the iris is ever growing back home. It wants to mutate, to consume everything, and this vessel we all live on is inching closer and closer to its demise. The next prompt is Moonlight, with the response. New things roam the feeding grounds. The harbinger guards in vain. Mary hears a creaking sound. The hungry eye is welcomed. Admittedly, this one's a bit more ambiguous. Could be referencing fake people as the new things that are more active at night. However, that's ultimately up for debate. What is clear is the term harbinger, which clearly alludes to harbinge technologies. A harbinger is defined as a person or thing that announces or signals the approach of another. In other words, exactly what harbinge technologies is doing. This line drives home the idea that this client is aware of their existence, and so too of the inadequacy of their products. This explains why the woodcrawler was able to break in so easily in Lethal Omen. Their guidelines don't work, but they're none the wiser because they probably followed them too, and died. Lastly, with the references to Jack, we can assume that he mutated. When this happened is still unclear, however we can postulate that it just might have been when those fake people attacked him. And so, with the way things are going here, I don't think RegNet's onto a breakthrough. Any sane person would pull the plug on this project, however they're pressing onward. I know this won't be good. Christmas Eve party. I love those. Here, we're placed into a 1985 Christmas Eve party at Moonlight Acres. Things start ordinarily, and the party seems lively. The sun's going down though, and we all know what happens then. first look at a distinctly different creature to a woodcrawler. Whatever this is incredibly large in size, with some sort of tentacles protruding out of its body. Wasn't enough, we then learn that this abomination is Mary. This video is interesting because it presents a contradiction. Mary Dean was listed at the beginning as a videographer. However, at the end, she is completely transformed to this. We know that deep root disease gains speed after it gets to your bones, but damn, I didn't realize it was that fast. This leads us to assume that Jack and Mary entered the Christmas party normally. Mary's affliction was likely at a very late stage, and she probably figured she could power through it. With this, the outside shots are potentially filmed by her as she stepped out to get some air. And while out there, that is when her transformation finalized. I know it sounds like, and could very well be a stretch, but I'm struggling to find an explanation for why this is. What is certain, though, is that she isn't a woodcrawler. She's as foreign to us as woodcrawlers are to them. And now we see what that mentality feels like. Home Invasion Help, an educational guide by our good friends over at Optica Video. The video begins by explaining how stressful home invasion can be, and reassures their viewer that this video should ease that. We're then told a couple points to be aware of, like the fact that windows and doors are the most common entrances during a home invasion, and that locking them can slow a threat. Following this, it advises us to install a security system, including cameras, motion detectors, and alarms, all of which can be disabled by blunt force. It's clear to us that this tape is not for the homeowner, cementing the fact that Optica Video is not a company of good. Interestingly, we now know the method of entry when woodcrawlers create fake people. Incapacitation followed by entry through the proboscis, or in other words, the nasal cavity. Now, quick side note. The reference to the proboscis is interesting because it's not something inherent to human beings. Interestingly, we also saw that woodcrawlers perceive humans as what appear to be mannequins, and perhaps their interpretation of a human nose is a proboscis. I don't know, could be a stretch, but that's what I took from it. Following this, we're now outside of a home. This handheld camera footage seems familiar. Let's see what they find. It's funny, going back to the beginning of this video and rereading everything with this new context really paints things in a different perspective. This video never referenced homeowners. It was always ambiguous. So throughout this home, we can observe the red fleshy substance we saw back in the garden. Furthermore, we can notice that same material sculpted into the shape of humans, with one of them clearly being alive. This is deep root disease in its most critical form. This family's house is clearly infested with woodcrawlers and likely has been for a while. Alongside this, the disease was possibly all over their house without them knowing it, and after contracting it and having it run its course, we now see exactly what it does to you. Furthermore, as we can recall from monthly progress reports, these deep root sprouts are able to grow anywhere, giving us a visual cue and warning of places to avoid. We can also notice how these people can't move. Much like the plagued NPC at the end of Lethal Omen, they're frozen, likely in their final moments of infection before their final transformation takes place. You're left in a vegetative state, unable to move, unable to feel, unable to speak. But there's a catch here. A few videos ago, we postulated that woodcrawlers do two things: spread DRD and inhabit the victims' bodies, which we now know is through their interpretation of a human nose. We never really entertained the idea of woodcrawlers inhabiting the bodies of people already infected, which is what I believe is happening here. Their skin is gone, and were witnessing what otherwise would be taking place inside of their body if they were fully intact. With this in mind, these people are now likely coexisting. One version of them are fake people out in the wild somewhere, but the real version, they're infected insides. Well, that's what you're looking at. And so we make our way to the 16th and final video of Gemini Home Entertainment. Brought to us by Geneva, a ship named Crusader 5 has returned from a decades-long mission after photographing Jupiter, Saturn, and Neptune. So, unsurprisingly, Crusader 5 has encountered the Iris and its many moons, and all of them appear to be fleshy, deformed, and alive. Interestingly, we also observed two moons being fused together by an organic force, cementing the fact that the Iris's influence is abundant, affecting more than just planets. Oh yeah, and Neptune's fucking missing. Alright, so this final video was a lot to unpack, but I'm gonna do my best to line it out. So here, we observed the inside of the iris, something that is unsurprisingly full of every cornerstone of a sentient being, with arteries, muscular fibers, and even what appear to be egg sacs. Before we get to what we saw at the end though, let's back up and establish what exactly this Crusader mission is. As we could say, it began in June of 1982. If the Moonlight Acres mythology is anything to go off of, then we know that the iris arrived in the solar system decades earlier. With this in mind, we can infer that this mission was reactionary. It's likely that astronomers noticed something happening with Neptune, with strange anomalies and movement not physically possible. And so, they launched the Crusader to venture out, take photographs of only Jupiter, Saturn, and Neptune, and report back with their findings. As we saw, the first stop was Jupiter. Here, everything was normal. The moons were there, Jupiter was there, and everything checked out. Upon moving to Saturn, the planet seemed okay. Crusader 5 then photographs 3 of its moons: Titan, Iapetus, and Chiron. Interestingly, Chiron doesn't actually exist, but the Crusader was still able to get a shot of it. It gets even weirder during this brief cut, in which we can read that the Crusader actually only photographed 2 of them. Anyway, moving on. We then make our way to Neptune. This segment only spans 2 months, and that's because Neptune is gone. During its hunt for this missing planet, it comes into contact with the various moons of Jupiter, Uranus, and Saturn that are all completely out of place and out of orbit. And following this, it then encounters the source of the problem: the iris. It's here where it's sucked inside and begins to photograph its interior. We then make our way through the esophagus and spine before approaching what the video calls its conscious mind. While inside, we then observe numerous scenes on Earth, including a DRD-infected person standing over a bed in early May, and either a transmission module or structure from Regnat Computing in late October. It's here where I'm led to believe that we're witnessing things through the lens of the iris. Somehow, the Crusader was able to link into its mind, observing the visual input that it's been processing. And finally, at the very end, we lose signal. The Crusader goes offline for 7 months, and from here, we can assume that it was then ejected somehow and made its way back to Earth. Well, either that, or it's still inside the iris. And the iris is the one making its way to us. And there we have it. 16 videos, chock full of disturbing lore, hidden secrets, and tons of names, companies, planets, creatures, you name it. There is so much going on within Gemini Home Entertainment, and the beauty of it is that it's given to us with such ambiguity. So much of this story is left up to interpretation, and for all I know, you could very easily have a different theory from mine on the events taking place. Tying this all together is going to be a monster, so if I were you, I'd grab a monster, because we're about to go full theory mode to piece together all of this. And so, ladies and gentlemen, to me, Gemini Home Entertainment goes a little something like this. Sometime within the millennium, a planet that we now know as the Iris enters our solar system, nesting its place between Neptune and Pluto. It was looking for life, any sort of home to invade and colonize. Initially, Neptune was a contender, which is likely why it chose this spot. However, it then discovered something else. The perfect target. The perfect home. The Iris begins to study, to learn how humans work and interact, simply because it can. It's far smarter and more powerful than anything humans have ever experienced and could easily take over in an instant. But it won't do that. At least, not yet. It mutates Neptune through some sort of means that is unclear, and this transformation finalizes sometime in the 1930s. It's here where it begins to emit solar storms to Earth, and with this, Jupiter and Saturn are affected by proximity. Within this first solar storm, there were likely trace amounts of woodcrawler, nature's mockery, and deep-root disease embryos, seeds, and antigens respectively. And it's possible that, upon reaching Earth, it took years for these to grow into a life stage that is invasive. Deep within a Minnesota forest, woodcrawlers make contact with Earth. Beneath the ground, they begin nesting, hollowing out the depths of the Earth's crust and building what we come to learn as their garden. It's unclear how deep this garden goes. However, given the phrase, mutation of the heart, we can assume that they're burrowing as far as the Earth's core. On the surface, effects of this mutation are felt in larger and larger quantities over time, and by the mid-1930s, people have begun to go missing. An unknown plant begins to multiply, and a strange, slow-moving disease begins spreading throughout the surrounding communities. People also begin acting erratic and unnatural. However, humanity is clueless on how to handle it. Word began to spread by the late 1930s as campgoers began reporting sightings of skinwalkers that we now know were most likely woodcrawlers taking the bodies of various animals. Given their repulsion to sunlight, we know that they were only seen and heard at night, meaning that people never really got a good look at them. As the iris becomes more influential, the lights in the sky event becomes more common, attracting more campgoers and resulting in more victims. Strange men begin to show up as well, and with this, some sort of ambiguous deal was made with the camp, and they left without ever returning. As these creatures in this foreign plague spreads, various companies begin studying and creating VHS tapes, all with a unique goal. Harbinge forms after the iris's threat becomes known, and they begin to create guides while engineering devices that they believe will help humanity survive it. Regnat, a highly competitive computer company obsessed with becoming a leader in technological advancement, becomes fascinated by the iris and begins manufacturing technology that can interact with it, thus resulting in the rapid progress of their titular AI. Geneva, a group likely composed of scientists, encounters anomalies deep within the ocean floor and decides to share their discovery, later landing them a space exploration deal in which they help launch a spacecraft called Crusader 5. Optica Video, an otherwise family-friendly company, at some point is taken over, resulting in their videos becoming manipulation tapes in favor of the iris. And caught between everything is Gemini Home Entertainment, a company that aims to document the mutation of Earth for archival purposes. They seem to be a neutral party, and this is likely why they accept all media about the iris, no matter the affiliation. As the decades pass, the mutation of humanity becomes ever abundant. People disappear in growing numbers, and Canadian and US governments likely become involved in studying the events transpiring. Resultingly, Moonlight Acres was shut down from the 40s through the 80s, and during its closure, various engineering feats materialize, like the ROCT and the Crusader 5, both of which were created to study the iris's influence. And by 1982, the Crusader 5 mission begins. In June, it approaches Jupiter. Nothing is found, and everything checked out. 3 years later, it approaches Saturn, studying it from December of 1985 to January of 1986. Things too seem ordinary, until the Crusader finds a moon that shouldn't be there. Concurrently back home, Moonlight Acres reopens its doors in 1985, advertising burrow-free cabins and new measures in place to prevent woodcrawler influence. During that same year, they throw their first Christmas Eve party in celebration of reopening and a new outlook. However, this party abruptly ends due to Mary's transformation into an anomalous beast that has not yet been studied. Consequently, the partygoers are either killed or flee, and among the latter is Jack, who makes his way to the campground bunker we saw in Lethal Omen. It's here where he waits things out while his mutated wife leaves, and thereafter, he develops a newfound goal in life to spread the word about these creatures. Back in space throughout the next few years, Neptune goes missing because of its mutation. It, Jupiter's, and Uranus's moons begin to suffer mutation, all of which are caught by Crusader 5. And soon after, in 1992, it gets devoured by the source of the problem. It's safe to assume that, by this point back on Earth, Jack Dean had filmed his World's Weirdest Animals and Wilderness Survival Guide videos. However, contrary to our prior assumption about him being killed at the end of the former, we realize that he actually survived this due to the Iris's vision of a man in a bed in early May of 1993, the same time we know that Jack Dean had gone missing. We assume that this DRD-infected person likely spread it to him given their inability to move from standing by his bed. It's here where he potentially entered the sieve to check if he contracted it, given that we learn that DRD-infected people are unable to dream. And with the existence of his dream, we learn that he did not. Resultingly, he ventures back out to film some more. He was given a new lease on life and decides to explore a house that he suspects is infected. As we established, the flesh people we saw were likely their infected insides, with their actual bodies being elsewhere. But something I failed to mention earlier was what happened during that ending. The woodcrawler that attacked him, likely resulting in either his death or his untimely transformation into a woodcrawler. And this is only the story of Jack and Mary. Take this and multiply it by the population of Minnesota, the United States, the world, and we realize the monumental scale of the problem. Gemini Home Entertainment is but a small lens to what we can see. Now imagine what we can't. The claim that the Civ dreams did not predict the future was a lie. They were stockpiled in Lethal Omen for a reason. And that was because they predicted what the fall of humanity would look like. So, as fate would have it, something happened while I was chest deep in making this video. Part of an entirely new playlist called The Library, we have a new video titled Wretched Hands. It appears to be an internal company tape, completely separate from Gemini, made by the staff of Moonlight Acres. The opening shot takes place on Christmas Eve. Given that it was denoted as taking place 25 minutes before the first attack, we can assume that this scene is happening concurrent to the Christmas Eve party episode we saw a few videos back. Moving on, We then observe two letters by a Glenn Arthur. In the first, written on May 3rd of 1946, Glenn explains to someone named Curtis that he's found a way to uphold their end of the deal without giving in to these creatures' abhorrent demands.
Curtis, come down to the camp this weekend. Fulton and I have devised a plan on how we can continue to uphold the deal without giving in to these beings' abhorrent demands. Richard has seen a bear lurking near the boys' cabins. We'll go out and shoot it. If the statue wants a sacrifice, it'll have to settle for this. I will be a pawn no longer. Curtis, I tell you this with complete certainty. If I could do it over again, I would never have made that deal. Glenn.
In the second letter, we get another reference to Lethal Omen.
Wretched hands tap my window. A stranger's fangs scrape the walls.
Alright, so this ritual, this deal that the camp staff made is now becoming clear, giving us more context on the decades-long closure of Moonlight Acres. For starters, this Glenn Arthur person is implied to have had some sort of affiliation with the camp during its original run, and we can assume that he was authoritative enough to make a decision as big as the deal with the strange men from the 1930s. I'm led to believe that this deal involved the statue requiring annual sacrifices in exchange for sparing their lives. Initially, Glenn went along with it, fearing that if he didn't, he would meet the fate of the others who began to go missing during that same time period. By the year 1946, nearly a decade later though, he decided that he couldn't do it anymore. It was too much for him, and so he explains to Curtis that he has an idea to mitigate the burden of having to live his life at the expense of others. That idea is a bear. He's gonna offer a bear in lieu of another human being in hopes that the statue accepts it. But, of course, it doesn't. Regardless, the bear undergoes the same ritual process as humans would. However, with it, its transformation results in a mutated abomination. Initially, it still resembled a bear. However, with it came a newfound hunger that was insatiable. At this point, it's unclear if the statue purposefully implemented this method of absorption into this bear as some sort of retaliation, or if it's some sort of poetic coincidence. What we do know, though, is that people are still being sacrificed and molded into something otherworldly. It's just that, this time, they're becoming utilized as limbs for this monster that won't stop growing. So, as it turns out, Moonlight Acres did not shut down because of government intervention. There was a monster on the loose, and given that Christmas Eve party, nearly everyone was killed. Alright, for real this time. I swear to God, we're at the finish line. We're done. We're here. During this journey, we have unpacked woodcrawlers, the bear, fake people, the iris, a disturbing campground, weird mannequin figures, the death of a couple, the motivations behind various companies, alien communication, planet mutation, inevitable societal collapse, infectious diseases, dream recordings, strange ritual sacrifices, and this bizarre unawareness by the general public as to what's actually going on. I cannot wait to see more episodes of this so we can gain some answers for things still shrouded in mystery. There was a lot left to interpretation, and I'm keen to hear your input about it. For instance, what did the mutation of Neptune actually entail? How in the world did people get the bright idea to reopen Moonlight Acres? Who's creating the Optica VHS tapes? What was the dynamic between camp staff and the ritual statue in Lethal Omen? And what exactly does the mutation of Earth encompass? We know it's happening, and we get visuals of it. However, the endgame is still shrouded in mystery. What we do know, though, is that within the world of Gemini Home Entertainment, humanity's days are numbered. Woodcrawlers and the mutated bear are hunting. Nature's mockery is consuming. And on the brink of collapse, society is hanging by nothing but a thread. The iris is with us now, laughing at us, and we know that it ain't going anywhere. What began appearing to be a simple invasion story about creatures taking over humanity had blossomed into an incredibly dense alternate history full of hidden bits of lore to uncover, interactive elements, and ambiguity surrounding a company that we're still unable to fully understand. I absolutely recommend that you watch this series from start to finish and formulate your own theories on what you think Gemini Home Entertainment entails. As we've seen, there are tons of secrets, and you just might spot something that could change your entire outlook on this series altogether. Remy Abone has crafted something incredibly special, and the beauty of it is that it's been confirmed to be ongoing. I don't know about you, but I know for a fact that I'll be here for that ride every step of the way. This is not the end of the road. There are still tons of points left unanswered, and much like the Walton Files, we now lie in wait until our next venture begins. In the meantime, I'm going on vacation. I'll see you all at Moonlight Acres.
Hello, somebody!
I've heard their views are to die for.
Because she's the one who's keeping the spirit alive.